Well, thank you very much. In fact, I have many thanks to give. My first thanks really is, of course, to Avi. So that we really have to think, how could you manage to get such a celebration? I mean, it is unbelievable. I must say that given that this is a 60th celebration, and the friends that were preceded me to the podium actually have a similar age, I must say that we have seen quite a few of these, right? But this is really the best I ever seen, and I had so much fun. It's unbelievable, really. So I'd like to thank you very much, the organizer, and all of the speakers, and all of you all. That is good and proper that to become here to celebrate Avi on his 60th. And in fact, it is really a great pleasure to be here. So, which brings a very ponderous questions. What are the pleasures of life? And I must say that first and foremost, love. No doubt, thanks to the broad interpretability of the word. Well, crushing your enemies and hear the lamentation of their women. Conan the Barbarian, right? Well, I would say perhaps a bit more civilized or more nerdy. I'd like to say that one of the real pleasure that somehow wonderful celebration somehow emphasizes so well is really to have a scientific community of true friends. So let me actually share with you what were my original hopes about academia. My first hope, on the romantic side, was to be so poor to really focus solely on things that matters. I must share that I was only 50% successful on this enterprise, but I don't complain. My second hope was to joining a vibrant scientific field. And I must say that was delivered on the nose 100%. I think that theoretical computer science is a wonderful field, and its interconnection with other fields really makes it better. And other fields welcoming our inputs is even really makes it wonderful. And my third hope was really having chivalrous and affectionate friends. And I must say that historic examples abound. We have Hilbert and Minkowski, Galileo and Torricelli, Barrow and Newton. And Barrow is unheard of. It's really, as soon as he saw Newton, he really resigned from the chair he was having at Trinity College and gave it over to Newton. Just think about this. I think these are very inspiring examples. Yet I want to say that these dreams were actually delivered 1,000%. And I must say that thank you, Avi, for exceeding my hope, right? Because I must say that, yes, one could think about having a great colleagues, one can think about great science, but actually having fun with the very people who are doing science, this was really beyond my hope. And let's put it another way, as a rhetorical question. Did Hilbert and Minkowski have pajama parties? I think not. So I must say that really one of the pleasures of life is really to be silly with serious people. So I must say that I want to thank Avi not only for his wonderful contributions to the field, to the wonderful contributions as to the papers that I co-authored with him, and I must say also even more for really your willingness to be silly with me and with all of us, which is really much appreciated. So, given such inspiring figure that we're celebrating today and the young people present in the audience, we have to tackle another question. How do I become Avi Wigderson? So, well, Avi Wigderson, here is a recipe in 5 easy steps. First of all, there is some neural connections that I must say that we don't understand very well these days. But as Hilbert said, I don't want only to put another pajama, poor guy, but we don't know, but we shall know. But meantime, that we figure out how to hook these things properly together. And Eyal, I hope that your work proceeds very fast because I have some rehooking that I need to do. Is that there are a few other things. This brain alone does not make the cat. Curiosity, humility, empathy, and playfulness. And I'd like somehow to go through them very quickly. First of all, Avi is incredibly curious. I think that is no secret, that is a fact. In fact, however, I propose to do the following trick. Go, because we meet Avi over again several times. Go and find some exoteric papers or something like this, and just tell him at a party, I'd like your opinion about this thing, okay? And even though he knows, and Eyal told me that the brain, once he knows what's coming, is going to filter out, he's going to go for it, because he's so damn curious. Second one, humility. Never, ever invite Avi to a party in which there are kids if you want to have a conversation with him. Because otherwise he pays no attention to you and pay attention to the kids. And what is even more remarkable is that the kids are going to be attracted to him. I must say, not even Santa Claus can do it better, okay? Because of the secret with Avi really is that he does not lower himself down to the level of the kids, but raises the kids to his level. And the kids, sick and tired of being kiddled around by the adults, so finally they find somebody who really knows how to speak to them, is really a magnet that you cannot get them away. And the other thing is empathy. And I must say that empathy-wise, right, so Avi visited us, we put him in the picture too, visited us a few months ago in Cambridge, and we had the two guests, Marja from Croatia, which is a legal scholar interested in European law, a friend of Daniela, my wife, and Diletta Barbiani, a neuropsychologist, and they were both coming to Cambridge, metaphorically speaking, to take a dip in the Charles River, and at a very delicate age in their lives to figure out really, do they want to compete in a so much larger arena and too much of their own personal lives to sacrifice and so on and so forth. So Avi being Avi says, listen, we'll organize a dinner. I say, oh, can I help with the cooking? He goes, surely can. Then I recruited the two of them, Marja and Diletta. I say, oh, wow. They all say yes. I go, wonderful. So I got over-optimistic. I invited 40 people, okay? What I didn't discount was Avi's empathy. Because all of a sudden they start, the three of them somehow started chatting and say, what do you do? So it's very interesting. Oh, but why do you take this model in your field? And says, what do you do in this personal life? And this and this and the other. And Marja and Diletta had a great time. They really could not tell me later. It says, Avi, oh, so wonderful. But tell me something, Silvio. Are all your colleagues as charming and as wise? So, meanwhile, somebody had to prepare the cooking because in 3 hours there were going to be 40 hungry people coming over and says, how the hell we do it? But, nothing could stop them and so on and so forth. They were debating life questions, deep questions and scientific questions. And, somehow the party was over and the three of them kept on talking. And so my scene somehow changed. But at the end, empathy. Right. But with whom? Okay. How about some empathy with the host? Okay. I'm saying playfulness. I must say that, as much as I admire curiosity, and we should all admire curiosity, and humility, and empathy, I mean, a world which is curious, empathetic, and humble can still be a sad world. But a world which is playful will never be sad. And I think playfulness is really the greatest gift. And thank you, Avi, for sharing your playfulness for so many decades with all of us. That is really a great pleasure. And so now I'd like to say, being a friend of Avi for so many years, I'm giving some special insight because I claim that a friend is somebody who knows us better than we know ourselves, okay? So I believe that all these qualities which we were discussing before really are one and the same when you see Avi the scientist and Avi the man. And so first of all, his breath, it's breathtaking, he's working on everything, the slide can contain it. And so that really is a sign of his curiosity. That is very clear. And then, however, understanding, so I believe that we all as humans come to the world with an acute desire to make sense out of the world, right? And some of us, the scientists, take it actually as a professional career, and they continue to do this doggedly for a long time, the scientists. But I'm saying there are many ways to be a person, and there are many ways to be a scientist, and it's really interesting to see the particular style that each one of us does. So I'm Italian originally, by the way. You can recognize the accent, I hope, at this point. And I must say that, how do you concoct the word for understanding? And I'm really fascinated by the English one, understanding, because it really means, stand under. I think you're a mechanic and you really want to see from below what this machinery is about and try to make sense of it. So, and in some sense, I'm reminded with no less authority than Francis Bacon that somehow we cannot command nature unless we obey to her. And that is really is humility. I really believe that it is this ability to be humble that it really is the true way to understanding. But that's not for most people, that's the way we stop. But with Avi, we go on, and now we have to switch to Italian, where the world is capire. And capire, because understanding has still a distinction between you, stand under, and whatever you want to observe and understand, those it's above you. But a capire means literally to contain. So the problem is not anymore on the outside, you bring it inside. Akin a little bit to the English comprehend, I believe. But capire is also transitive and intransitive. So it is a state of being, of a oneness that we have really with the problems we want to solve. And that is somehow, I believe, really is the empathy. Because you empathize so much that you really fuse the thing, and that only you have to do is to translate whatever is empathy on the personal level becomes actually scientific level. So when you really wonder how Avi does solve all these problems, I think you have to bring this into consideration. Finally, playfulness is the shortcut to the truth. I could not find anybody who has said it, so I take full responsibility for it, okay? But I really mean it, because somehow I believe that this playfulness has something to do with modeling, okay? And modeling is the playfulness is really what allows us to have the courage to go on a limb and propose 100 models, 90 of which will be derided or will be abandoned, but 10 of which will take root and will thrive. And in fact, everybody knows that somehow models is really the power of science, and of theoretical computer science in particular. But fewer people realize that the abundance, the richness, and the expressiveness of our models are the fruits of our playfulness. Samson has been said, strength lied in his hair. I really believe that ours, theoretical computer science in particular, lies in our playfulness. So I really hope that the young people, researchers will come here to congregate and celebrate Avi together, somehow, like him, take example, and never shave their playfulness, but actually proudly sport it for your entire life. Enough said. Avi Wigderson, kneel. For your deeds of heart and mind, we, the theoretical computer science community, make the Night of Computer Science, October 7, 2016. We further decree that your heraldic colors will be gray and red, and your coat of arms will be the brain and the heart, and your motto will be scientia et fun. Fun, you can have it in English. Okay. So, rise, Sir Avi, and happy birthday. So let me tell you that you guys are going to be guinea pigs, because I never explained this to anybody. In fact, I never explained this to myself. Yesterday, I tried to, somehow, I had some bunch of slides, I tried to put them together and time myself, right? And say, oh, it's good. Then I went back to the clock, and it was 127 minutes. Says, maybe I did a mistake. I tried another second round, roughly 120 minutes. So I shortcut it, but I don't know if it's comprehensible. I hope it is. So I want to let you know about something which I didn't know anything about it until a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago actually, about the public ledger. What is it? is a sequence of data. Actually, this data is organized in blocks, so you have many pieces of data in each block. And this data is actually readable for all, by all. What does this mean? That, put them in the sky, and everybody can see them, right? Furthermore, this data is writable by all, so which means, given that I put it in the sky, that this guy there, he can just point at a piece of data, and it appears somehow in the next block. Magic. Finally, this data is not readable by all, writable by all, but is actually tamper-proof by all. What does this mean? Nobody can change a damn thing. Okay? That is the thing. So that is the object that we want to study today. And I'm saying, well, this public ledger, what is good for? Well, let me tell you a little bit. Don't press me on the details, but because we're going to very, very quickly. One is stock settlements. Everybody of us at some point in time has sold and buy stock. And if you're like me, first I sell and say, what have I done? The price is going, then I buy, then I sell it again. So in a microsecond, millions of shares change hands. And somehow a waiver, you can let you do that right away, but it takes 3 days for them to settle. Why? Because at the end of the day, you must know Silvio, did Silvio really have the shares given that he sold them at time t when he actually sold them? So somebody has to reconstruct, linearize time, and see all these events, how in which sequence they happen. So if these are over there by magic right away, that's no problem. What else can we do? Titles. Titles, yes. Because, if you are living, heaven forbid, in a corrupt country and you want to sell your house, well, people need title. Where do you go? Officials give titles. You want a title? What are you going to, from me, what do you give me? So you need to pay to get your own title to the house you actually own, right? So if everything is over there, you can bypass this corrupt bureaucracy altogether. So another thing is that you could do things like certified email that years ago, I had a very complicated protocol for trying to do it, right? To do it only in 2 parties. But if you forgive me the details that you don't ask, but at a very high level now becomes, a kid stuff. Because essentially, I'm going to say, dear Bob, here is an encrypted message for you. I want to send it to you in exchange of our receipts, and I want you that you get the message if and only if I get the receipt. And here is the deal. If you like it, in the next 10 blocks, put a digital signature, you want to receive it, right? And I promise that in 10 blocks later, you'll see my message. And if you don't put the message there, then you have no obligation. You'll receive nothing because, of course, you're not paying attention to the public ledger after that. So if I put this there, then somehow you sign, I want it, and then I must put it or not put it, whatever it is. Really, it's amazing. It gets that simple. Another thing that you could do is money. Money is, who needs money? Why money is a scientific thing? So, well, yes, there were some happy times where we didn't have any use for money. Those were the happy days, no mortgages. All we had to do is to escape our predators and various carnivores. So, but you can imagine that money, because money at the very end, why to have this physical object if there is this ledger, right? I can actually, because I can point, so you can figure out how much money you have looking at all the transactions before, and all of a sudden I want to pay Avi $10. I just point it and say, Silvio gives $10 to Avi, done, that is written over there. So, but say, is his birthday? It's true, $15, okay? Happy birthday. So the other thing is that essentially what you can see that just let your imagination run loose, that is essentially is the linearization of chaos, right? Because all of a sudden you have sequentialized the whole thing. And actually think of it as the new web, because the web has done tremendously well to unite us as really people across countries, continents, cultures, and everything. But in the web you find the false and the true all mixed together. They're not even time organized. That's a way to actually distill what really matters in a linear way. And if you don't even like this, well, it can also cure the common cold. Look at how happy this guy is. He goes on the public ledger and comes back anew. It's magic, okay? It's a panacea. So, bottom line, the public ledger is a dream infrastructure. Okay, how implemented? And I must say that who knows whatever had the first implementation of it, but it was a genial implementation. The heart is mine. Because I really love this idea. which I knew nothing about it until a year ago, which is called about Bitcoin, which who knows who the inventors are? Maybe it's a certain Satoshi Nakamoto, who appeared by magic from the middle of nowhere in 2007, a protocol for doing money. They were focusing on money on a cryptocurrency somehow. And you say, if you want to pay a money, just download this and play around. Guess what? Nothing happened for many years until tick, 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 a few transactions happened, and right now there are $10 billion worth of things exchanging of this. And presumably is one person, a group of people. Are they academic? We'd love to think so, but it's not clear at all. And certainly the other ones that follow, Pirkon, Ethereum, many of them are very smart people, and not all of them are academics. René Descartes, which was actually cited earlier today, admonishes us correctly that intelligence is uniformly distributed. And okay, so how does this Bitcoin works? Well, it's based on two basic ideas. If you never heard about them, you'll never understand it in one slide, but otherwise, there is digital signatures, and for perverse reasons of mine, I want this to be deterministic. And so you have a bunch of people, I, J, K, and they have public keys. In parentheses, they also have secret keys that they use to sign. And so here, signature of M is whatever represented is a string that only player I can somehow produce, but anybody can verify. End of story about digital signatures. How about hash function? Well, Bitcoin says, well, hash function is a function that maps arbitrarily long strings to 256 bits strings. And they model it like a random oracle. It is not only they, it's a venerable example. In fact, we model it too. It's much easier things to do. So think about it that you compress a string, 256 bits, and each one of them is like, is as good as a coin toss, okay? Once you compress it like this. I would say, in fact, actually, this is very believable if there is entropy in the string, but even if it's a H of 1, think of it like it's a random oracle, is 256 bits. Good. So how does a Bitcoin public ledger implementation? Remember that they are interested in transactions and payments, so we shall track them. And these are digitally signed and gossiped. Okay, what does gossiping mean? Gossiping means that the system people can put me to shame, so I'm going to be very light. So, it's something that you are aware of how many people are around that are going to play the same protocol. You somehow select, say, 8, 10, 20 at random, and you send a message to them. And they have to send it, they randomly select a few neighbors in cyberspace, not neighbors by link, okay? Neighbors by names who are active now, and they send it to them, and so things propagate that way. All right, and so I make a payment to Avi, my $10 upgraded to a $15 payment, dated and things. This is for Avi, my public key to Avi's public key, and now it travels with the network, and somehow everybody collaborates to toss them around with hot potatoes. Of course, you don't propagate things you already propagated, so the whole things at the end ends. Okay, and then all these things floating around, once in a while we want to grab, say, 10 minutes worth of all this new stuff that is on the web and put them into a block. So remember that I had to tell you how to do these things. I want to say that these blocks must be readable by all, writable by all, and tamper-proof. So readable by all means once you build it, and we shall see how, this block is a string like any other thing. You just propagate it around, so everybody will know. By the way, that is the only thing, I wouldn't say only, that we could do in a truly distributed network, because there is no authority where you can go to a website to see what happened, right? So we are all together in the soup. And tamper-proof for all means the following. You remember this hash function H that I told you about, right? This one here. So you put a block, you digest it to 256 bits, and that's a part of the new block together with the rest of the transactions. So they are nested hashings, right? And so what happens? So you have a chain, right, of blocks, B1, B2, B3, etc. And the last one, say, everybody knows, right? So what happens is the following. Assume that why is this tamper-proof? That I want to make a change. If I have a payment, 15 blocks, maybe it's too much. I want to pay 13, okay? I make a little change. This little change, of course, becomes a 256 bits random string altogether. So 50% of the bits are totally changed. So the next B3 also, of course, changes. And by induction, that speculates, and then at the end, they should have a different result, right? Why? Because a random oracle, you cannot find a collision. You cannot find two different things that the random oracle maps to the same thing, right? That is it. So behold, this is the blockchain. That is the basic tamper-proof structure used by Bitcoin. In parentheses, I want to say that a part of my work in Algorand is actually to do better than these chains. But I'm not going to touch upon this topic in this talk. And the only thing that I'm going to focus is really how is the process to collect all these things floating around the network and put them into a single block. Here, how Bitcoin does it. So we have several players, right? And remember, they care about payments, P1, P2, P3. So there is all kinds of payments that have been made which have not entered any blocks in the blockchain yet, and they go around it, right? It's a mess, it's a cloud, dust comes out. If the dust settles, what we are going to see is that that's what these players are going to see. And notice that these players actually, I don't illustrate for all players, not to take over all the slide, but they share, most of these payments that I've seen, Avi has seen too, right? In fact, you can see P1 is common, P99 is also common, but not all of them, right? We can have only partial overlap. Okay, so what can they do? We can actually sign all of this, say these are the things I've seen, these are the things I've seen. Okay, and now we can propagate what we saw signed. But ladies and gentlemen, that's which one of these is the block? Now I have is a confusion, is a contention. So what Bitcoin does is the following. Say, don't just sign the transactions that you saw. First of all, choose also this red R, right? A random string. Now, and then you hash it. And now you look at the last bits of this hash. Are they 0, 0, 0, say 20 zeros in a row or 30 zeros in a row? Either yes or no. This guy actually has it. This guy doesn't have it. So the one who has it, he's the winner. Okay? Because he's the winner, now has the right to propagate, or anybody can propagate, but everybody says, oh, we have to listen to him because he has the block whose hashes ends in 0, 0, 0. And he gets some money. How? Never mind. Okay? But what is the idea? The idea is that we propagate and adopt only the winner's view. And the point is that we choose dynamically K, according how many customers or players there are in this game, so that we have one winner every 10 minutes. If you think about it, what does this mean? Essentially means the following, that anybody can announce to say, I've seen this block, right, if you have a microphone. But there is a magic microphone that somehow materializes among us humans, so that in 10 minutes period, there is only one microphone, right? So if I have a microphone, I say, okay, I've seen all these transactions. Because I have a microphone, everybody has heard it, that is the block. However, occasionally there can be more than one winner, because I hash whatever I see. I may end up in 0, 0, 0. If it's too rare, we'll never make progress, right? We'll never construct blocks. So sometimes I can do the best so that on average is 10 minutes, but sometimes 30 seconds later, somebody else finds another block and starts propagating, and I have two blocks going on. And you see, that is actually called a fork, because now I'm a little bit, say, confused for a second. And somehow a fork is unavoidable. It is natural. There is nobody to hang and punish for getting a fork. It is a byproduct of the system, right? So, however, we must resolve a fork. It says, well, I've seen this, I'm ready to construct blocks. I see that there are new payments or some old which were not collected yet, and I wanted to embed in this chain, but it's not a chain, it's a bifurcation. So the rule is very simple. Grow the longest chain if one of them is longest. In here, they are equal length. Choose them at random. Okay, so I elongate this. I nest bk plus 1 into my the hash of bk into my block and continue. Somebody else comes along, different player now, same problem, sees a fork this time, there is a longest chain, he elongates the longest chain. And so you can see that somehow by this random process, right, occasionally you can have two forks that keep on going for a while. That's very improbable, right? At some point in time, you have only one longer than the other. And so what happens to the rest? Well, the rest nobody will pay attention to, right? Because the history is going that way, and these guys like, Neanderthal man, somehow they disappear. All right. So, however, you can see that this fork is a form of uncertainty in the system that causes a slowdown. Because if you want to go to Amazon and you say, okay, I pay by Bitcoin, right? First of all, Amazon says, I want to see that stuff gets into the blockchain. Now it's in the blockchain. Should they ship you the goods? Well, I don't know, because there may be a fork, right, and this thing is going to be ignored. Let me wait not 10 minutes, but 30 minutes, so that I'm at least 3 blocks down, or if I'm more conservative, 6 blocks down, and then I ship you the goods. So essentially, the true latency of the system is not 10 minutes, is half an hour, depending how conservative you are. Ladies and gentlemen, voila, Bitcoin. First of all, you must agree on one thing. That is one damn good idea. Extremely well motivated, okay? In fact, I never seen something so motivated, right? There are so many applications for this stuff. Now, the solution we can argue with, right? It's a little bit of a Goldberian machine of the way you get it. But, wow, in choice of problems and solution at the same time, that really should get, 10 out of 10. It's really a wonderful idea. So, nonetheless, we want to somehow improve it. And I believe I should convince all of you to work on public ledgers. And let me tell you what it is. The main idea is a proof of work. How do you slow time down? To artificially make something hard so that you have one winner every 10 minutes, and so you can listen to him and you organize history, right? That's the idea. And the main assumption is that there is an honest majority of computing power. Why? Because what you want to do is that you want to create these blocks, right? And if you are not, you must end in 0, 0 your hash. If it's not, you choose a different random string and you hash it again. And if you're not lucky, you keep on doing, right? So think about it, if there is somebody who has a way more computing time than ours, he can actually erase history, right? Because he can say, oh, there is a fork here. Why? Because I paid the $15 million to Avi by chance. So all I had to do is to go back to some other branch, create a branch there, and compute a blue hash block, get longer than this. Everybody will ignore this $15 payment that was only meant to be $15, and I'm safe. So the important thing is to say that the assumption underneath is that there is honesty of computing power, the majority of honesty computing power. And the main goal is to have really a democratic, truly distributed systems. But there are actually some main technical problems. The first one is the insane amount of computation wasted to create these coins. Let me put it this way. If all of a sudden I take my laptop, and because there are rewards in Bitcoin, I start mining for blocks, I actually lose money. Why? Because the electricity that I pay to charge this thing is going to exceed the expected reward that I'm going to get in Bitcoin. So, okay, and moreover, a lot of this computation, what do we do with it? Is just wasted. Well, it's not wasted, remember. So we have a history here. When we search for golds, what was that we were doing as humanity? We're making a gigantic hole, that's what a mine is, right? And it's not so nice like these. They're underneath, with poor workers coughing up the thing. So that is actually a nice mine. But at the end, so what they've done, you've done a hole. So you've wasted all this. Not really. We have provided liquidity to the system to settle our transaction, make us progress as humanity. So because there is this historic precedence that somehow coins, gold, whatever, had to be worked, say we are working, that's to be expected. Should be. But just by historic precedence? Well, 1,000 years of history doesn't mean much. The other thing is the concentration of power. They wanted to be democratic. But guess what? My computer cannot do it. So what happens is that there is going to be created actually supercomputers whose only job is to mine Bitcoin. These computers absorb, a very big percentage of the computing time now, including us and everybody, NASA and everything else. And these computers don't have any operating system, heaven forbid. They don't have Word, they don't have PowerPoint, because this slows them down. All they want to do is to try to find Bitcoins. That's all they want to do. Okay, so that means that actually they created pools, right, aggregations, and guess what? Now we have 5 mining pools. And the news is that actually we may have only 4, because I heard a rumor that one of them wanted to expand, getting in debt of some good old-fashioned $1 million to get an additional machinery, and somehow the reward is getting a bit smaller. They don't know how to pay their debts, and they're going to go belly up. What is the honest majority of computing power if you have 5 people? I mean, I've never known in the history of the world when there is 5 people who control the money supply. And essentially, that's what it is. And then there is a question of scalability, because I'd like to accelerate things. Well, you can't, because you have to wait 10 minutes, otherwise you have too many forks, right? So to scale things down. And then there is also other things that, if you really want to talk about money, that you have to bring in the social discourse at large. Something like courts, our institutions. So if I also wanted to say, dear judge, honorable judge, and a member of the jury, I did pay my $15 million to Avi 2 years ago, and here is the block. Say, well, but did you have the money? Well, here's the various blocks that you can see that somehow acquired the money. And guess what? Here is the judge, here is the jury. Right? It takes a long time. So it's not only you want to have money, but you want to have money with associated properties with it that right now we do not have, not in this implementation of the public ledgers. And finally, at least, we are a different community. We are a bit more rigorous. We are a bit more conservative. We like proofs, right? And rather than a bunch of heuristics. So you'd like to analyze this, right? And somehow the analysis is a blend of incentives, but also of honesty, because if people don't somehow gossip and help you propagate these things, and what is in for them? If you find a block, you give you some money. But if you just help out the system, then you say, well, but it gets so little time to get honest. Anybody could be honest that way. In any case, there is an analysis, but the analysis is slippery. Okay, so what are we going to do? We are going to go from scratch, to start from scratch. In fact, actually, we are going to go from the roaring 80s. It was a wonderful times, right, which were the times where Avi and I launched ourselves in this business of theoretical computer science, and that is my photo album of the people where I'm going to use the work. And you can go to realize some familiar names out there. And these are the works that actually were done exactly 79, 80, 81. So that is the thing. So here is Algorand, right? Is another public ledger, totally different. Again, transactions are digitally signed, or payments are digitally signed and propagated by gossiping. And then somehow they're assembled into blocks. And somehow, what does it mean readable? That once you have a block, you propagate it the same way. And then say tamper-proof, for now, let's say a blockchain, right? I don't want to make things more complicated. So what is going to be different is the process by which we build a block. And here are the properties that I want to have for Algorand to have, and I'm going to go one by one. Trivial computation, I really want that only takes a few additions, counting, comparisons, signature, and verification, the end. I want to have a single class of users. Why can everybody wants to have a single class of users, not miners on one side and payers on the other side. But the way we implemented the public ledger somehow required so much heavy investments of computation that not everybody could be a miner. Instead here, because the computation is so trivial, there is no miners, and we have a single uniform population. And we are going to have scalability because we are not going to have time for anything. Our real bottleneck is, well, how long does it take to a block to propagate through the network, right? And usually to reach somehow 90% of the network takes, I don't know, 40 seconds, something like this. So, but if we have a better network, faster network, this can go up. We don't have to wait for 10 minutes. 10 minutes you have to wait no matter what. And then I want no more forks. I hate unpredictability. I mean, I want to be unpredictable. I like unpredictable people. Eyal told me why. That is a human desire. But I don't, not on money, okay? So not on these transactions. So I want to have a probability of a fork to be low. How low? 10 to the minus 12, roughly 1 in a trillion. Why that? Because if we say manage to speed up all the block construction in 1 minute, say, that means that we can expect a fork in 1.89 million years. At which time, I don't know how you feel about it, but I would be more concerned about we survive as a species, whether one payment system of ours is still around the time from now. And by the way, I want to have efficient probability. So I want to have something that a few kilobytes can actually survive, can actually outlast our needs for the next 2 billion years. And then finally, we'd like to have a compact analysis, right? So, all right. And what is the approach? Well, the approach is the Sicilian cryptographic realism, which means I'm going to assume the worst. And why? Because it will happen, okay? And so, however, worry not. So we defend ourselves against the bad guys, and we are not intimidated. So what is the adversarial model? The adversarial model is that I have a very strong model, that there is somebody who can actually, called the adversary, who can immediately corrupt anybody he wants whenever he wants, and perfectly coordinates all the users he wants. Well, subject only to a budget, so he cannot corrupt more than tot many, or I'm going to be more explicit. And so what is the communication model? Gossiping. But what I want to gossiping about, I need assumption to prove anything, right? So I'm not going to prove anything today, but so what is the assumption? But if I honestly propagate to my 20 random neighbors and they will do the same, somehow I have a megabyte, somehow in some amount of time, say 40 seconds, I said before, will reach 90% of the people. And if I say something small, which, a few bytes, then it will get, in 2 seconds. So I want to have long, short propagation time. Okay, only for honest people, right? Dishonest people, they can travel at the speed of light, they can do anything they want. And the assumption here, there are 2 assumptions. One, which is very easy to talk about and discuss, that the majority of the users are honest. And it's something actually that, tell you the truth, we actually believe. Unfortunately, this makes no sense in this setting, because the adversary, if you say, oh, what is a user? A user is a public key. Let me print 1 million public key just to make sure that, now I have a key with no money and so on and so forth. It makes much more sense to use instead the honest majority of money, so which means the majority of the money in the system is actually owned by honest users. And that is the one that makes sense. But however, you allow me the next 15 minutes, 10 minutes to only speak about the other. Good. So what is the basic idea? The basic idea is cryptographic sortition, which was a suggestion of a long time friend of mine, Maurice Herlihy. And the word sortition, what does this mean? Well, politically means that in a republic as diverse as Athens, Florence, Venice, somehow many of the magistracies were actually elected by lottery. The Venetian Republic lasted 1,000 years, okay? We are already on the verge of having some major shakeups. That's a long time. And say, they actually had, they were very wise people, say certain times coin tossing is the best thing you could do. And I must say that, right now our jury system very often are not dissimilar. And if you have to hear to William Buckley, right, he famously said that you prefer to be ruled by the first 1,000 names in the Boston phone book than by the faculty at Harvard. Let the record show he was not talking about Princeton, okay? Okay, so the idea is, if we take it now, what I want to do is the following, to say, hey, you know what? We are billions of users, Algorand is very successful, the public ledger is very successful. Let's put in charge 1,000 people, 300, whatever the analysis is going to tell us, but very few. And then we're going to select it randomly, for the reason I said. Suddenly, why suddenly? Because if I know in advance who is going to be in charge, a year from now, I go and corrupt them and I have plenty of time to do it. And then what I'm going to do, and then they say, and also small, so that I actually can have a intense conversation between each other, and they're going to be in charge of deciding the next block, okay? It's their business. We are outsourcing the block construction to N people. By the way, however, we must make sure that this selection process of this committee in charge of doing the next block is not manipulatable by the bad guys, right, with fangs and claws. And we have to make sure of this. So here is cryptographic sortition at long. So here is really the crowd, the users. And here what we want to do is select a few of them. By the way, one has horns. Why? Because he's a bad guy. As I tell you, we are a mixture. I believe the majority for now of us is honest, but if I pick n at random, I'm going to get some dishonest too. And there it is. And so these guys are, let's call it the verifier of the block R+1. They are in charge of producing the block. And once they do, they get the rewards. Think of it like a percentage of the transaction value that has been contained in the block. All right. So who selects them? Oh, the answer is no one. No one? Why? Because essentially what I want to do is this hash function. Remember, this random oracle that give you the previous block is going to, you hash, you get 256 bits. If it's not enough, you take a pseudo-random generator, which is pre-specified, and you elongate as much as you need. You select all the damn committee. Okay? Everybody knows this committee. Now, analysis 101. So now we're going to start a cat and mouse chase. Okay? And the cat and mouse chase, worry not, because it's going to have a quick and happy ending. Well, maybe this one. Maybe it was the mouse was chasing the cat. In any case, good guys win in the end, okay? So, what is the danger? The moment in which you say, it is the past history is going to decide the next step, the adversary says, well, I am part of the past history, right? So what do I need to do to elect this committee? Maybe I make a payment to myself for $1. Maybe I make a payment of 1 more cent to somebody else. And this hash function is so sensitive to any minimal changes, right, that it scatters completely the thing. Should we worry? I don't think so. Not at this stage. Because if you have an urn of billions of balls, right, red and blue, and the red are 90 to 10 percentage-wise, and I take 1,000 of them at random, I'm going to get a majority of red balls, which means of honest people. Okay, but maybe I can do this Gedanken experiment in my head, say, well, let me change the payment and do another grabbing of the balls. Again, red majority. Again, red majority. It's going to take exponential time for these guys to go, right? That's the idea. So not to worry about this. Wonderful. So now we have our committee. Now we know as an honest majority, what are we going to do to select this next block? And the answer is Byzantine Agreement. That's the most laughable thing I've heard. Because Byzantine Agreement, are you sure? This is, time-consuming process when people have to talk for so many rounds to one another. This is the last thing we want to do in any system that, is going to have legs. Yes, but redesign. Redesign how? Well, honestly, first of all, I'm going to take the same definition. For those of you who don't know what it is, has to satisfy 2 properties, agreement and consistency. And agreement means that if you take the n players, and they have all scattered values, each one has his own initial value, they are going to end up, all the honest people, with the same value. Okay? That sounds good. That's agreement property. Consistency. Just in case that the good people initially started with the same value, they have to agree on that value. Okay? Now you look eyeballing at this and say, that's a useful property. I hope you say that. When you say, well, I can design a protocol that achieves this on a piece of paper. Well, congratulations to you if you do. It's not very easy to do, but actually can be done, and there are ways to do this. But now comes the thing. Why can I use it? Because I have a new way of doing it. Okay? And the new way takes 3 steps, independent of the size of the committee. How? By a rabbit out of a hat. I'm not going to tell you, okay? I'll leave you some suspense. But that's what I'm going to do. And the real question is why the community didn't do it before. And you know what? I don't know. But I cannot apologize to the community. All I can say, including me, I can say that it's better late than never, okay? So there is such a fast Byzantine Agreement. He says, so what? What is this fast? There's nothing to do. If I understood the rules of Byzantine Agreement, it tells you that if you start with different values, you end up with the same value, but we don't know with which value. In fact, you may actually end up with the empty set, so the empty block, right? So I don't need to do anything. The system is going to fail immediately because there is going to be zero progress. No block will ever be created. That's the point. What are we going to do? Now we are going to be a little bit smarter. So what we're going to do is the following. I take at random n people. How? Because I take this hash function, I compute the last block, and I get, say, log n m random bits where I'm users. That's the Boaz. Then the next thing, okay, this is Jing. Next thing, this is Dick. Then Nati, right? And I compile. The first, I call it is the leader. And what is the role of a leader? To seed properly the Byzantine Agreement. So once you know that these are the players, this guy say, I've seen this block. And now these guys are going to run Byzantine Agreement where their initial values are already equal and therefore will end properly. At least if the first player is a honest player. But H is the percentage of honest people, say 3/4 honest, then 3/4 of the time the first player in a committee of n or randomly selected is going to be honest. So I'm going to do this. Wait to what? You know, the point is, remember that now the part of the history the adversary can manipulate, right? So what does this mean? That I can actually do a Gedanken experiment again if I pay a cent here, what happens to the committee. But now I want to focus on what happens, who is the first member of the committee, who is the leader of the committee, right? And I'm going to find whatever I could do, which I know what H is going to be of a new block, because I'm part of the new block, until I get a bad leader. And then all I have to take here is, even if there is 90% honesty, 10 trials, nothing. That is dramatically different from the fact in which I want to draw n random balls and I wanted to have a dishonest majority. I only want to do that the first be dishonest. That's an easy thing. And now once I have this part over here, this guy is bad, he can just say, forget it, let's agree on nothing. And everybody is forced to agree on nothing. And we have zero progress. So in other words, if there is not a dishonest majority, there is no fork. You must have a dishonest majority. But if there is just a bad leader, you have no block. Now, from a Bitcoin perspective, you're going to say, well, there is no block, no rewards. What's the advantage of the adversary, right? To say, because if you make progress, you get 1%, say, of the money that is in the block. If you have an empty block, you get no money. But not by incentives alone. That is the cryptographic point of view. So let's put it this way. We have here two leaders, two people contending who is going to be the leader of the next free world. One of them thinks that Putin is a great leader. The other one thinks that Putin is a petty dictator. One of them is going to lead us, okay? Good luck. Okay. So let's assume, for the sake of example, hypothetically, that Putin is a bad guy. And all of a sudden he says, gee, sire, so we figure out that the West is actually using a public ledger, really. Yeah, this all money is pouring in, and says, who is in charge of these 5 pools? 5 pools? That's very good. So here is $1 billion for you, it's $1 billion for you, 5 billion, and say, what do you have to do? Just simply don't agree on anything, okay? Just do an empty block. And then suddenly the West has no money. So can you imagine? It's a major hurdle. So I really believe that when you want to analyze money, it's not only by internal coherence, as Gödel said, that any sufficiently complicated system, right, it cannot be judged correctly from the inside. You have to have an outside, which the economists will call externalities to consider, and that is something that they really want to consider. So here is the idea. The idea is to have a magic quantity QR. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you say that you start with a block, you go to QR, you go to QR, and then now somehow you have a good leader that the thing cannot influence. And finally, it's to say that, well, okay, but at the end of the day, even the leader not include, I must know who the leader is, and I just corrupt him, right? And that's a problem. And then that's a problem, and I'm making 0 progress. Okay, so I do have time. 2 minutes. 2 minutes is plenty. What? Over 2 minutes. All right. So then there are a bunch of things, and let me tell you. Forget this. Let me just go to the last. Okay. One last trick, and the thing that I really want to share with you is really this generic player protocol, because it's something that I didn't believe it was possible. And so somehow I want to share with you what it means. It's a totally new class of protocols. And all I want to do is, that is the last slide, besides conclusions. And then to say, so here is where we are, right? So the adversary has been fighting us all along, but we have fought bravely against it. Our flag is stuttered, but it still flies. Is one last stand. The adversary is in very strongly entrenched position, but we are going to carry our colors across, and we are going to clear the field for the enemy. In so doing, we shall suffer very heavy casualty. But whoever of us falls, somebody else is going to substitute and carry the flag. So protocol, charge. So we have a blue protocol, red players, they continue. Hooray. We won. Okay. And so somehow is to say, but what kind of a protocol is this? So we have all kinds of protocols. So what is the relationship between these protocols? The relationship, none. These are different players. There are also different numbers. It gets worse, okay? They don't share any variables. So in any protocol, like multi-stage protocol, I have some internal computation, depending on the message you say, in which state I'm in. Here, no state. Do you pass to somebody else? No, I pass nothing. So, but what do is that they share an environment. Because when people gossip, essentially, what you hear is what somebody else hears. So you can pick up the flag and keep on going. And that's the idea, and you can do it. At the end, let me conclude by saying that for centuries, we have actually constructed beautiful architectures that they have actually withstood the test of time, like this one, and actually have united us as humanity in being extremely useful to our human enterprise. And I believe the public ledger is going to be as beautiful and as useful as any physical infrastructure that we have ever created. And I really urge you to devote all of your attention to it, because the public ledger is going to be mainly responsible to hold the world up. So thank you, Atlas. You can take a rest. We'll take it from here, and thank you very much.